Story number 1, my parents' haunted house. My parents thought my brother had a imaginary friend. His name was Joe, and he lived in the closet. My brother woke up screaming in the middle of the night. I was a baby, so I don't remember, but I've seen pictures. My parents ran in there, and he had blood all over his sheets and 3 very long cuts down his back. They had bunk beds, and my other brother was on the bottom, and my parents said he was so pale and wouldn't say a word. Things calmed down for a really long time until I was about 10. I had one of my friends staying over, and we were staying up really late playing games and doing what little girls do. We started to hear scratching coming outside of my door. I had a cat, so I thought it was her. I went to open it for her, but no one was there, so we shrugged it off. Then it started again, and the doorknob started to jiggle, and it slowly opened, and there was a dark figure standing there. Looked like it was out of breath. Its shoulders were going up and down. Yeah. Then it lunged at us, and we screamed. My parents came running. Nothing or nobody was in the house. She never stayed again and stopped being my friend shortly after. 9 years later, just little things were happening, nothing too scary. My boyfriend, now husband, went off to basic, and I still lived with my parents. I was only 19. I had my dog Zeus was sleeping on my bed with me. He is a yellow lab. It was about 6:30 in the morning, and I had to be up at 8:30 for work. He woke me up by growling. Then I heard a weird voice in my ear speaking a language I didn't understand. When I started to open my eyes, it started growling in my ear. I opened my eyes fast and my door slammed. My dog was standing over me with his hair standing up, looking like he was about to attack something. Everyone was at work, and I heard banging around coming from my parents' room. I got Zeus off of me. I jumped out of bed and ran to my parents' room. Cabinets were opening and closing fast, and things were getting thrown everywhere around the room, and it wouldn't stop. I went to run out, and the door slammed shut. My dog, now running around the house, barking and growling, started running into the door. I said, "Fuck it," and ran out of there, grabbed my work clothes, my dog, and got the hell out. I dropped my dog off at my friend's and went to work early. When I got home, my parents' room was destroyed. My mother was crying, and my dad was pissed. I told him everything. We decided not to talk about it again and went on with the rest of the day. My brother still lived with my parents as well. That night, my door kept opening and closing, and I kept hearing running in the hallway, so I thought it was him. I slipped on my slippers and stomped to his room. I was going to yell at him to knock his stupid shit off, but when I opened the door, he was snoring. I woke him up and made him promise it wasn't him. He told me to leave his door open to see if he sees anything. I'm halfway down the hallway. My brother yells at me to run to my room and not look back, but of course I turn around instead. As I turn around, I see a large black figure staring at me. It had large red eyes, just staring at me. I froze and started to whimper. My brother, being the protective big brother, came charger, telling the thing to leave me alone. When he got to it, it disappeared. My brother ran to me and led me to my room and slept on the floor that night to stay with me. I didn't sleep. Now, a year later, I'm 20. My husband is away for the army at the moment, and we are waiting for a plumbing to be done at our new house. Last night we had a bad rainstorm. I woke up to growling again, but I couldn't move. Out of the corner of my eye, there was the figure with red eyes again, just staring at me. Thunder started, and it opened its mouth so wide it could have fit my whole head in its mouth. It had huge sharp teeth and a long skinny tongue. It started to scream. My ears started to ring. I wanted to cover them, but I couldn't. My dog, half growling and whining, starts to bark. My parents came running and covering their ears, but stopped in mid-run when they saw the thing. My dad came running to me anyway and picked me up and carried me to his room with my dog following. Zeus had his back to us so he could face this thing, and he never took his eyes off of the figure until it was out of sight. I finally was able to move and started crying and shaking uncontrollably. My brother lives here as well with his girlfriend. He installed panels in every possible place. We heard her scream. Then she started banging on the door, so my dad opened it and she came running in, crying and shaking. We started to ask where Mike was. Before she can answer, he came out the room on his hands and feet with black eyes, just staring at us. We all froze. None of us knew what to do. My brother then popped his neck and started running for us. My dad slammed the door shut and locked it. My brother started to run against it. My mom is screaming for it to get the hell out of her house and just kept repeating this while throwing things and stomping, and then it goes quiet. My dad opened the door and my brother was passed out in front of the door with his nose bleeding. When my brother woke up, we told him everything. He didn't remember a thing. He remembers hearing screaming, then it all went black. He tells us all, sorry, and then stays quiet the rest of the night. Nobody slept last night. We all called in and tried to figure something out. Now it is the next night, and it's 11 at night, and we are hearing growling and scratching through the house. We can't do this again. Story number 2, A Hitchhiker's Nightmare. To understand the magnitude of my story, you must know who I am, so here's a little backstory. I was born in 1954, so my formidable years were spent growing up under the influence of the 60s and early 70s in a very small town in upstate Ohio. When I say small, I mean one light at Broadway and Main. There were about 40 businesses in the center of town. The drugstore soda shop was right on one of those corners. There was also the hardware store, small grocery store, Ben Franklin's, gas station, and barber shop. We had Baptist, Methodist, Lutheran, and Catholic churches, and most everyone went to one of them weekly. You get the picture. It was Mayberry. Oh. We also had a library, a post office, and the jail. The jail was set up so you could easily sneak right past the cop desk 9 times out of 10 to go see if anyone was in jail. If there was, we would run errands for them, go get cigarettes, whatever. We never bothered to ask, "What are you in for?" Kids? I was a curious, free-spirited, and completely wild and innocent child. A little bit later came the assassination of JFK, the civil rights movement, the Vietnam protests, and the hippie revolution, which I joined in, becoming one of the earliest hippies. So, maybe you can now guess where this story is leading. Hitchhiking was commonplace in those years, so I did it a lot. For a little over 3 years, I made many trips all over the US and Canada, much to the dismay of my mother. Sometimes I took friends, sometimes I went alone. Always with no money, no clothes, and no worries. So many people tried to warn me of the dangers, but being very young and naive and feeling quite invincible, I ignored all of their well-meaning advice. This wasn't my first trip, nor was it the last, but it is the most memorable. And you'll now understand the gravity of the very close call that it was. June 1969, I was 14. I was spending the night with my friend Dina, who lived in a neighboring Mirrid town. I talked her into coming with me to San Francisco. She just happened to have a brother living out there that she had not seen in a while. So we headed out across the cow pasture to the highway and stuck out our thumbs. It never took long to get a ride, as you can probably imagine. We received many rides. A band tour bus picked us up on their way to a gig in Chicago, but we didn't want to make that big of a detour, so we passed. I can't remember who the band was. I remember another ride when we got into a convertible Cadillac with 4 men and went to a party in Columbus, Ohio. We were the only white people at this party, and let me tell you, we had a blast. I never felt unwanted or in danger. In fact, the nice lady that lived in that apartment gave me a shirt, which I thought was so kind. Now, as an adult, I realize she was trying to cover me up. God bless her. The next ride was pretty cool until he picked up another hitchhiker, a lone guy who kept nagging him about how much trouble he was going to be in if he got caught taking these 2 girls across state lines. I became very agitated and told him to shut up. We should have gotten out right then and there, but we stayed. He wasn't dangerous, just annoying. Well, the driver stopped for gas in Iowa, and Dina and I went into the restroom to freshen up. When we came out, the cops were waiting for us, and we ended up in the Iowa City Jail. I'm sure our parents were contacted immediately, although I do not recall this. I don't think we were there for too long before Dina's mom had driven out to pick us up, and after a conversation with her daughter, she decided to drive us the rest of the way to California. That's just over 1,900 miles. Unbelievable. I remember singing to the radio all the way to Nevada. I especially remember the mamas and the papas, "Are you going to San Francisco?" Later, we booked into a hotel in Reno. Worrying. This is not what I signed up for. I tried to talk Dina into just taking off. I realize now as an adult what a terrible, selfish act that would have been, and how devastating that would have been to her mom. Lucky for everyone, she refused to do that. So, I stayed. We finally ended up in San Francisco, right at Haight-Ashbury, near Berkeley College, where all the hippie action was, with her mom tagging along. It was also overwhelming to me. I was pretty cool for our little town, but this stuff is way out of my league. I did mention how very naive I was. I was not fully aware of things like drug addiction, but I saw it firsthand at Needle Park. Seeing everyone strung out on drugs scared me to death. I saw other things too that I cannot mention. Needless to say, I was shocked. I wanted to go home and have never wanted to go back to California again, and have never been back, even to this day. I don't remember how many weeks I was gone on that particular adventure, but shortly thereafter, I was home watching TV with my mom. It was July, and it was all over the news about the Manson family and the infamous murders. I then realized how close I had come to being picked up by them and possibly becoming one of the family. Every day, I'm thankful that I did not get caught up in that. I was sure ripe for the picking, especially if they would have gotten a hold of me before I made it all the way to California. In all my adventures, I was never beat up or injured. I really do believe that I was under divine protection.